do this, y'all. Everybody ready? All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. At this time, it is now 6:30, and I will call this budget workshop to order. Shall we stand and do our pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Palm, would you do roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor James.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Ambrose.
Present.
Commissioner Jamison.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, moving right into item number 1. Presentation of proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget for the following departments. Who's up first? Police.
The way we're gonna, good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor. I think the way we're going to go is I'm gonna go through and present it, and as I'm done with each department, then they'll come up to answer questions. That way we just keep it going
Okay.
quickly. And did y'all all see this? This is an updated one of the departments we're going over today.
Okay. I was gonna ask you if it was the same thing or what was different.
Yeah, it's in order. We had some additional requests that came through for some of the departments, but we'll go over them today. They were the departments we're going over today, not the ones we already went over.
Right,
So they'll be in there, and I'll pull them out as we go through the presentation.
all right,
And so it's in order, so you don't have to be flipping around or anything like
okay.
that. So first we'll go over the summary of funds. We have the general fund, the revenues and expenditures equal, they're around $5,550,633. The revenues for, well, that's just the summary, the first slide is just a summary, then we head into police. So if you look on here's the summary, right here. And then if you pass kind of those initial payment pages.
Well, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm okay. I'm good. I was looking in,
Well, I'm not, I got a front.
I think it's on the thing
I
they
got
gave
this
us.
one.
Right on top.
So follow this,
Okay.
not the book.
Okay.
Okay,
That'll make it easier.
Oh,
It's all
okay.
in order. So we have the summary of funds on the sheet, then we go through, then some other sheets we don't really go over, it's just extra information for you to have, then we'll hit police.
okay,
The special revenue funds, the expenditures exceed the revenues. The expenditures are 3.5 million, the revenues are 2.9 million. The major reason for that is the amount of projects that Parks put in that they want to do next year because they're very ambitious. And, but they did have adequate fund balance to cover it.
mhm,
The enterprise funds came in at 14.35 million, and the expenditures are 14.3 million. The grand total, and that includes capital projects, which made it very high. So this isn't just the operating. Since some things are gonna get funded next year, it hits the following budget year. So, was 23.3 expenditures over 23.8 revenues, and again, that's mainly due to all the parks projects. So next we'll head on into police, and that is on page. That starts on page 11. And then we're all in order the whole way from here on out. So the personnel expenditures for police came out to 1.2 1.4 million. Operating is around 379,000. Capital, we have $45,000 in there. That's mainly for 3 leased police vehicles that will be an ongoing expense. The debt service is $103,000 from previous vehicles, making the police department budget a total of 1.9 million. The changes from last year that were included were the 3 vehicles. There's around $15,000 in building improvements. The cost increase for Alachua County Dispatch, and we didn't have funds budgeted for a magistrate, which we need to have for the code compliance, so that we can move forward with a stronger code compliance program. So along with that, we cross-referenced the budget with the strategic planning items that y'all wanted to accomplish from our strategic planning session. And so far, we have the impact fee study going on. The vehicles are put in there, and Chief Shepherd had already received some grants and things for the firearms. On the special revenue side, we did take some of the police and pull it out this year and made some of them into a special revenue fund so that to more adequately track revenues that were separate from operating. And those are mainly to track the grants for FDLE, the holiday cheer donations, and the forfeitures, because those monies can only be spent for certain things. And that was around $31,000 for the revenues and expenditures. And I'll let Chief Shepherd answer any questions y'all may have on that.
Good afternoon. Any questions, or you want me to start with something, capital projects with the vehicles? I can expand on that if you like. Okay, well, the why is a good question on why we are in need of the vehicles. There's 2 components of that. One being the last couple of cycles, we did not budget vehicles. Second component is that we expanded staff during those cycles. We expanded our traffic unit. We added on investigations for the detective. We also received the transfer of code enforcement under the police department. We did that all with existing resources, so that depleted us and put us in the situations where we're at the vehicles. We will have a budget amount of 20 employees. This is particular to vehicles, and we will have 20 vehicles. So we need the spare cars in our organization, and depending on how many we get, it will determine whether we can get some of those infamous Waldo vehicles. Why do we need 23 cars? One would be for our patrol as a spare, so that would be about 17, 18 officers who, if their car goes down or if it's involved in an accident, they'll be able to utilize that vehicle. The second vehicle is utilized for our reserve officers. Those are the volunteers we have in our organization. They come out, volunteer their time during the each month. And then that third car is for our civilian staff, including the administration, where when they have to go to training, or if they have to deliver products to Florida Department of Law Enforcement in Jacksonville and in Tallahassee. So right now we've been limping a little bit the last few years, kind of depending on vacant positions and also trying to borrow to get the other vehicles for transportation. So that's where we're at and why we're at with vehicles. That's our number 1 priority. Yes.
Leased vehicles. So we were supposed to be doing this every year.
Correct. We did not.
And we didn't do it. So what is in place to where that doesn't happen again? Or if things were to hit the fan, do we not do it again? Does that make sense? And maybe the city manager needs, or somebody in this, I'm just curious as to how that happened
And
And can it happen again, or do we have something in place that it's not going to happen again?
I think with the process and why, obviously with management, city manager and here in the commission to decide there. But what happened in this previous time was COVID. Took a stance of being conservative and not knowing what was coming in. And that was kind of why we didn't get those vehicles. And if I can add on, I did run some numbers with the current cars we're trying to eradicate. We're trying to get some of those older cars off our fleet. One's a 2006 Crown Vic, one's a 2009 Tahoe. Those vehicles are about 200,000 miles. I pulled some numbers to see what we're spending in maintenance on them. And I have numbers at $1,000 for a pop, another $1,000, $300, $500. That's what we're incurring when we retain those older vehicles. It depends on how many cars we get funded, whether we're going to buy those cars.
One thing I want to clarify is Chief Shepherd requested more than 3 vehicles. There was a request for 5 to 6, which is what he should have been receiving coming into this year based off of what he should have got the previous years. But based off of budget restrictions, where we're at, this was best where we could fit it into the budget to where he could at least get some vehicles to start releasing some of those older cars. Currently, as it stands, like he said, there is no program in place, or it's really difficult for them to get a vehicle fixed or repaired or in the shop. We just regular routine maintenance, not talking just mechanical issues because of the lack of vehicles in a reserve status. And Chief Shepherd can correct me if I'm wrong, but historically with law enforcement, most law enforcement agencies, when their vehicles hit 75,000 miles, they normally put them in a reserve status and run them until they hit about 100,000 and then get rid of them. We've been in a situation where we're keeping them for almost double that. So we're going to have to get aggressive with this over the next couple of years and really try to right the wrongs and fix some things that we've overlooked over the next couple of years. So it's going to have to, and to answer Commissioner Jameson's questions, what are we going to do to stop this from happening again? I mean, we're just going to have to keep advocating for it and have to keep moving forward and try to make it fit into the budget the best we can.
And I expand upon, he's correct on the vehicle uses, but what a key with law enforcement is idle time. Our vehicles idle 12 hours, an hour. So we look at the idle, and that's why it's, those idles probably double the actual mileage that you have.
The goal is to get the vehicles where they need to be by being aggressive over the next couple of years, and then get on a vehicle replacement schedule and have a vehicle replacement fund. So that's the long-term goal.
Vehicle, I'll go to our two requests and items. Those are the body cams, and we know that they're expensive, and we have 2 different grants out there. So we're more hopeful in the vehicle as opposed to the body cams, where we know it's a want and almost a necessity, not a necessity as a mandatory. So we're going to continue to seek grant funding to be able to take on that for body cams.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. The communication services, what was budgeted and what's been spent year to date, and then what's forecast for next year is a big increase. And I was just wondering, does that have to do with GRU, or what? Are we getting more calls? And I don't have the current budget that's sitting in front of you. I have the one from the 10th, so maybe that's been adjusted.
So I'm going to answer this just because this happened to everyone's budget. So a lot of that was in the IT budget, and we took it out of IT and put it in the departments that are using it. And police was one of the higher, users of the
Okay.
communication services. So that was just kind of a transfer between funds for more accountability between departments.
Okay, thank you.
Since you brought up GRU, I sat in a radio board meeting on August 11th. There is some big changes coming to our GRU contracts and what the cost of that's going to look like. Right now, GRU sounds like they're going to agree to what we currently have right now. We won't know again until September or so. But if the methodology that GRU has proposed to go through this system goes through for everybody on the system, we are potentially looking at double the cost for GRU contractual services, the way they're wanting to do the billing. Giving you a heads up now, we may be coming back in March or April saying, hey, in January, they made this decision. We finally just got it. We got a bill last year in January after we already adopted our budgets. And the first bill looked great. It looked like we all were going to save money. And it was a money savings the way they presented it. And then all of a sudden you got a bill on the backside saying, hey, now you're not only getting billed for your talk time on our end. Now when the dispatcher talks to you, you're going to get billed for it. You're getting billed for it twice. So for one example, Alachua Police Department, theirs triple. Has a possibility of going more than that. PD has a possibility of almost doubling too. So this has nothing to do with the Sheriff's Department. This has nothing to do with our contractual services with that. This is strictly a GRU thing. Alachua County is looking at a countywide radio system. They are looking on partnering with the municipalities on this system, and they're exploring options. But we're going to be working on this over the next 2 years. But we've talked about this with a joint meeting. I just wanted to let you know where we were at, why it got brought up, and we could be coming back for mid-year budget adjustment if needed. We're having some different discussions.
Residential with the GRU was going to go up substantial, which I read at the time too. So I assumed it was going to spread out and hit, so.
Yeah, so the actual methodology on the radio system was initially they charged by user. So if I had 5 radios, I paid for 5 users, no different than what you would pay for your cell phone. And that money went into the technicians and the service the system. And it was sufficient the way they were doing it. It was somewhat reasonable versus us having our own contract. And Chief Shepherd can tell you when they had their own contract with Motorola trying to do stuff on the tower, it wasn't cheap. So it worked out well, and it worked out for a lot of people. Well, as GRU kept going up on the prices, former sheriff decided they were going to take all the radios out of jail. They lost 700 users when they did that. So they looked at changing their methodology. Well, most companies, i.e. cell phone companies, if they expand their services and they got to charge more money, what do they try to do? Put a commercial on TV and get more customers to try to offset that cost. And it went from treating us like partners and like we actually mattered to treating us like customers. And there's a different methodology there when you're dealing with it. You know, if you're going to treat us as partners, then we kind of make decisions together. If you're going to treat us as customers, I don't care what you expanded the system. That's your problem. You figure out how to pay for it. Go get more users if you got to pay more for it. And that's kind of been the thought process. So I don't want anybody to be sick or shocked if we come back. We may come back as early as next month and be like, hey, we got some stuff we got to talk about. But I just wanted to let you know, since Commissioner Ambrose brought up GRU, I figured it was a good time to segue into it.
And so these upcoming ones, a lot of these are Assistant City Manager Gillihan. I'll just go through them and he's available for questions. I think I'm going to go through facilities next and cemetery, just for time, and then we can ask questions about both of those. So for the facilities budget, personnel is for around 86,000, operating around 78,000, total 164,000. We put more money in there this year for the elevator repair because it's, continuing to go down, and so we're just planning for those costs. Minor roof repairs at City Hall, and we would love to do the whole roof, but there just wasn't money. And the strategic planning items that have been accomplished under the strategic plan are, we're underway with the impact fee study. We've gotten a lot of information to our consultant, and they're, sifting through it. And we were able to get the audio visual for the council chambers. Cemetery personnel is 45,000, operating 13,000 for a total of 59,000. We put more money in the cemetery budget for dead and dying trees to take care of those. There weren't any in our current strategic plan. We didn't have anything down there for cemetery, but if there's anything you want, there any concerns or issues that are important to you with the cemetery, that you would like in the budget, then, there's still time for us to try to figure it out. The special revenue fund for cemetery, the beginning balance of that fund is 187,000. We anticipate 10,000 in revenues, no expenditures. As you know, this fund is mainly used for capital purchases. There's an ordinance on it, so we cannot use it for operating. But the ending fund balance would be 197,000. There's no changes as with the cemetery general fund. There were no strategic planning items in the current fiscal year relating to the cemetery. So if you have any questions, me and the assistant city manager are available for those.
This is to the health insurance. How much the total amount went up for the city? Because every one of them is substantially up. I mean, this went up 10 grand. To me, that's a lot of money. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, it's not. But I think by the time you did all the departments, so what is the reason behind this? And did we? I don't know.
On the health insurance?
Do you want to let Angela talk?
Angela or Jenny,
Or
on
Jenny?
that?
Actually, in last year's budget, when we started looking through it, some of the items were not funded, were not showing in there. It just included only a portion of it, basically the health and the vision and the life, and some of the other stuff was not included. So we've actually included that. We had no increases in dental or vision, and I think it ended up being 9% increase in health. So that's not strictly increases, that's where it wasn't budgeted before, and that's being added back to it, so that adds to the increase.
You're just having to pay for it anyway.
Okay.
Ashley, question, just as a comment I've had from a couple of citizens that have family in the cemetery, is they had a concern that when trees come down, and as they're getting older, that we're not planting any new ones. So they were hoping that maybe we'd look for some places to add some trees, so that over the years, the cemetery continue to have, that canopy that it kind of has now.
We can do that. We'll try to see if we can put some more money into one of the funds for it. I just have to go out there and assess how many trees are needed and all of that, so.
I just wanted to relay the comment from citizens.
Thank you.
When it comes to trees, you got to be very careful when you plant trees. Because if you're putting them in the, say just anywhere in the middle of the, you're gonna have problem with roots down the line. So you want to be very, very, very careful. You come out planting trees in the cemetery. I mean, very, very careful.
Yeah, while we're on the cemetery, that's a good segue for this next conversation. On the cemetery special revenue fund, we got that reserve fund in there, formerly known as the trust fund, the resolution. I've gone out to the cemeteries and I've looked at some stuff. One, the High Spring Cemetery is full. It's got a few cremation spots in it. Pine Hill's still got some lots in it, but we're getting full. Do we want to look, and this is at the direction of the commission, do we want to look at possibly an expansion at the High Spring Cemetery? And if so, we need to look at doing radar and some different things out there to identify some rocks, because we did some of that north end before and it's full of rocks. There's some other projects that need to be considered at the cemeteries as well. We need to look at the fencing. The fencing over at the High Spring Cemetery is horrible, especially on the ball field side. It's been run into, it looks pretty rough. Pine Hill needs to have some of the fencing clean up over there too. There are some projects that we can do to make those areas more appealing and clean them up. Just the aesthetically that need to be addressed. Fencing being one, and then what would we like to do with an expansion over there? We got some little water line projects going on in there, some minor things, addressing some spigots and adding some more stuff, and, you know, taking away a couple, and, you know, just making some adjustments, other things that can be done, but we have some bigger ticket items we need to look at too. I believe there is, on the resolution, it's got to maintain 100,000 in there, unless, so 100,000, if the commission a couple of years ago decided, you know, hey, we got plenty of lots full of Pine Hill, let's get rid of those first, so kind of seeing what y'all would like to do, we have a little bit of money in there to look at maybe doing some of these projects. I don't think we can do them all, but, you know, do we want to look at, you know, maybe doing a ground penetrating radar this year and looking at the rocks and potential expansion within the current fencing area and then coming back with some fence ideas and a couple little things? Or do we kind of want to leave it alone right now and talk about it next year and build up the fund a little bit more?
We could put some money in contingency and then come back with projects if you'd like us to.
And Mayor,
So you'd have to approve them before you move forward on anything.
the original thought process when they had the BMX,
Right.
Yeah.
that was known that whenever the cemetery needed to expand, then the whatever, would have to move. It would have to come down and the cemetery would expand that way. But like Bruce said, that when they talked to the commission before, we have plenty of cemetery spaces out at Pine Hill. And people have been buying them out there. And we also have several spaces for cremations that are available. So we're not out yet. And we could put some in the very back where, along the fence line,
Mhm.
where there's not rocks there, but we would have to take down all of those trees. And that would be very expensive.
Yes,
People
indeed.
wouldn't really like that. And
That would
speaking of
be-
trees, if we do plant trees, I would suggest maybe planting them around the fence line or
Yeah.
something like that, because we have had a lot of issues with roots disrupting gravesites and headstones and such.
With all that being said, Jenny's saying wait 18 months.
Yes, 18 months and then.
You'll still be gone in 18 months. But I mean, if it's something y'all want us to explore and look at, we can get together and bring it back to the commission and whatever your flavor is, those are just some thoughts we've had. We've all had complaints at the cemetery, and we know of what we've been looking at, what we've been dealing with, but just looking at them, I mean, it's just time. Some of that fencing's old. Some of the, you know, water lines are in wrong spots. I mean, there's a water line that runs out Pine Hill that goes right over the top of some grave sites, and it's going right through some plots right now that it needs moving. We'll look at some of that stuff and try to take care of it, but some of the bigger ticket items, these fences, removing some of these trees, looking at some expansions, what direction we all look at, or we'll talk about it next year.
So, Jenny,
Yes, sir.
I cannot remember the name of the guy we brought that property from, had the old trailer out there.
Oh, yes, Cruz.
Cruz, yeah. So that's the area y'all talking about where the rocks is?
No, it's in the very back
The back.
on the right, within the fence.
Oh, within the fence.
Within the current fence area, this is.
Now, we haven't done the ground penetrating radar on that section.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I don't believe that was purchased with cemetery.
I can't remember.
The Cruz property
Cruz.
with where the
What was that?
trailers in the back where the public works from showed up.
I think part of it was, I think part of it belongs to the BMX, and then the other part of it, or where the BMX is, I have to look at the parcels.
Right, we looked into it one time and the parks director said that would interfere with some of the items that they do.
The BMX track,
This is-
that's always been an important event every year. Do we have another place that we can do that or no?
I mean, we could go on the other property we were just talking about.
That's the only.
I mean, that's really the only place you could go with the size of that thing.
And I'm not sure what Public Works uses it for,
That's their-
is it storage
It's
or?
our dirt yard.
Their dirt yard and
Um,
lime rock,
My rock.
but I mean, but I think a good place to start before we open that can of worms is probably let's look at what we have within the fenced area. Let's go and see if we can't maximize the real estate that's there and see if it's even feasible to move forward. And if not, we need to have a very difficult discussion.
So you got 197 and you're saying you need a minimum in that account is 100.
Yes, sir. I mean, I'm not advocating to spend all of it on.
No, I'm not either, but I'm just saying if you go in there, if you say, take 50 grand, come up with some projects that would go to 50 grand, let us look at the different projects or options that would go to that deal. And then we can look down. I mean, I would be open to that, some of the aesthetic things you were talking about.
Like you could put up maybe some fence and some stuff like
I'm
that.
just saying,
come back
just-
to- And then, here, clean up that entrance in the Pine Hill, it needs it desperately, the cleaning overs and stuff like that. And come back with the cost to do the ground penetrating radar and see what we can do.
And so what you would say is the 50,000, let's say, and that money would be moved over now, it would be taken out of this, it would be moved over to contingency. That way, at least it's allocated for that.
Right,
We don't.
so we won't spend it without
We don't
moving
have
over
to-
the plan.
We don't have to move it because it's already in there. We just
It's a
allocate
reserve.
it. It's a reserve. We would just.
Right, you would just put it in a different line item type of thing.
We would allocate it.
Right, and when I say move, I didn't mean out of there, I'm
Yes.
just saying within the deal, so. Me personally, I would have no issue with that as far as doing that and trying to make incremental type improvements yearly or biannual, if that was the case. So,
Mr. Williams, I see the wheel turning.
No, I'm just thinking about no rocks, that's High Springs.
I mean, it is, so we need to get a better idea of what we actually can do within our current area, I think it would be beneficial.
It's not a lot, because we do have the radar map showing,
Right.
it would just be piecework, and you don't really want them spread out.
No.
Okay, are y'all ready to go on the street? Okay, so just to start, staff is fully aware of the need for a street budget and to fix the streets in town. We understand that's one of the #1 issues. Just to let you know, at the end of the presentation, we have a list of projects that are unfunded and ones that are possibly funded. Before we start on streets, I think we've had discussions with some of y'all that we have a number of grants out there that have very good possibility of coming through for the streets. However, in the street budget per se, there's not all of a sudden like $1 million in there or something just because we didn't have it. And it's very expensive to do streets, so we're trying to come up with other solutions. We think that, if or when we get growth, then those increases in the revenue, can go to streets first. As well as, we can look at a bond election for some of the streets and let the citizens decide and or continue with the grants. But there isn't enough to dump a big pot in there like we would like to. So the personnel for streets added up to 257,562. And we did add another employee to streets, a service worker 1, because it's needed. Operating revenue, 288,000 for a total of 545,000. As noted, the changes were the service worker 1. Our strategic planning items, again, we're trying to figure out revenues for streets, was we have a study going on currently right now for the impact fees, and roads is one of them. So hopefully when that study is done, y'all can look at assessing an impact fee on new development, not existing citizens, new development coming in, because they do create increased capacity on our roadway system. So we need to account for that so we can maintain our streets. The grant submittals for roadway and drainage improvements are something that we're being very aggressive at right now. And we do have our eye on, allocating future revenues for streets and trying to slowly start building that every year. This year, we started with the service worker 1 because we need to get a street crew if we're going to do more streets. So we wanted to put two employees in there, but we only had enough money for 1. So.
Is there a, in the road and sidewalk repair, the 20,000, is there projects that you have outlined that are going to do that, prioritize to do that, or is that just money that we're gonna, when something happens, take care of it?
That's normally what we use when something happens, a water line break, we've got to trench the road, we've got the sidewalk on 340, like the DOT sidewalk we're fixing to replace across the street here. That's normally what that goes, so or anything that comes out that we get a complaint on one of our sidewalks and it's got dangerous angle or something like that, gives us a little bit of money to be able to remedy those things.
Do we have a list of, priorities or roads? I mean, I know it would be a long list, but we talked about starting one. So at least we can see how big the problem is we're really looking at.
Yeah, we've started, or at least I've started looking at a few of those, especially with some of these programs we're working on right now. It's coming quite long. I think the idea, talking to the city manager, is to bring it to the commission and let you prioritize as we get ready to start funding these to figure out where we're gonna go.
Initially we contacted some of the firms that we use for engineering and got quotes back so that they could do a condition survey assessment. The cost for those came in like around $40,000, which staff feels is pretty high, and the condition of the roads throughout town is so deteriorated that we can pick out the worst ones pretty easily. And then that condition assessment might be more worthwhile a little further down the road after we take care of the most critical ones first. I mean, the thought process is to look at the roads that are most traveled on and used, that people have to get to for connectivity and accessibility to other places, and that are in the worst condition. So, there are standards that staff, we've looked at them already and have some initial ideas, but there's also, we're also going to be using the typical standards and rating ourselves. And just trying to do it in-house to save a little bit of money, but further down the road line, if like we decided to go out to bond election or something, then we would, use an engineering firm to make sure we pick the right ones, and probably do some town hall meetings to get input from the citizens. So we're not just sitting here making decisions in a vacuum.
Okay.
Mayor. So your last statement is the one that I'd like to spotlight here for a second. I think if there's any way that we can come through this thing and we can identify, I think what we've done is we've talked about it. And since I've been here, we've talked about it, but there's never actually anything been done. I know we've done piecemeal some stuff. Is there a way, when you get into the impact fees or so forth on the and this one, where we could actually sit there and take a 3-4 year plan or so forth and put it out there, knowing that this funding is going to be there to do it, so the citizens actually know that this isn't a pie in the sky, and you follow what I'm saying, to where here's the deal and here's the money, and that money is going to be there to do this. They may not like that we're not getting to it now, but I think if you could sit out there and put it, here it is, this is where the money's going to come from, this is how it's going to go, at least they know we're not kicking the can down, so to speak, or talking trash. Is there a way to do this?
Yeah, we're right now, once that impact fee fund starts filling, we can use that for the condition assessment survey, the professional one. Right now we were already thinking, do we buy more police vehicles? Do we do the roadway condition assessment? And we felt like there's enough knowledge out there and we know enough people that they can help us so that we can identify the initial ones. And maybe halfway through the year, if we're doing well financially, we can come back and ask for a budget amendment to do the condition assessment or put it in the budget next year, and or continue to look for grants.
Well, I think the thing to identify it, that's one thing. And I'm not getting, because I'm as much fault here, I've been up here and we haven't done it. So I'm not shifting blame or what do you call it? It's one thing to identify, it's the other one to tell the people that we're going to actually make the money and this is going to be there to do it. Identifying a problem and not doing anything about the problem, that's what, and I'll take the blame on the deal for a lot of it. So what I'm asking is can we identify them and can we actually sit there and say that the money, we're going to have this money, this is what we're going to do? And I know things vary. I understand that. But to some degree, we have to be able, talk is cheap. And at some point in time, we have to be able to sit there and say, look, you may not like how we prioritized them. You may not like the way we did this, but we did something from the roads.
I think what we're going to have to do is, this budget year was kind of putting things back in the budget that had been taken out so we can be budgeting adequately. I think in future years, we start placing money every single year, allocating more money to the roads, just like you do the reserve fund. Like no matter what, every year, this much money is going towards roads. So until we get to the point where we can have a decent road fund, I really think if there are any of these developments you like, and some of them that are coming are really good, and some are you might want, you might not want. But I think if we do get some growth, I think that will help, because then we'll get more revenues, and that is one area we can look at putting it. But I also believe that roads are very, very expensive, and so to some extent, I mean, there might be some roads you have to go out to bond election for, because it's to have enough money to do a mile or 2 miles of road. I mean, that would take our whole ad valorem tax 1 year. So like, we're gonna either have to identify them and finance them and or go out to bond election. We're working on the impact fees, we're working on grants. It's gonna be a multi-tiered approach to try to get a road budget. And if we take it out to the citizens, they don't wanna do roads, then that's fine. At least they have the choice and have the opportunity to consider it and make a decision themselves. Because right now, we'd have to cut major areas. If we were to go out there and just start paving a lot of roads, it would be detrimental in many areas.
And the other side of that is, while we're looking at roads, we're identifying and keeping back of your mind, and this is what I'm doing now, is where are they at on sewer implementation in those areas? We're gonna be coming back through there in 5 years and tearing those roads up. What's the age of the water lines in those areas? Is there stormwater management on those roads, or is this something we gotta engineer stormwater management on? A lot of our roads were done so long ago, some of them don't have stormwater engineering on. So we've got to start from scratch on a lot of these. And what's the age of the water line? Is it ductile iron? Is it transite? What's the age of it? You know, if it's an area that we have 15 water line breaks a year in, we want to put good pavement in that area without replacing that water line, or do we got to look at all areas that we're looking at?
Yeah, and the water sewer master plan will bring out some CIP projects with water and sewer, so that'll also help you. That's like Bruce said, that's typically when you do some of the roads, so you'll put that in there, and they've been making really good progress on it, so hopefully that'll be coming to you soon as well. It's putting all the pieces together. It's not being ignored, believe me. I think we talk about it daily. So
Thought that we was putting money in a fund for roads.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
a lot of,
I thought in the years past, I thought we had, cause let me see, when the last road we did, I guess that was 222 and Railroad Avenue with the chip seal.
The chip seal.
Yeah.
As a Band-Aid, if you will, to get some of the dirt roads out of there.
Yeah, cause I remember having that list of roads. I thought River was putting away funds for.
we'll bring y'all a list before the end of the year and try to come up with like a plan, and I think we really do need to get that water sewer master plan done.
Yeah.
And then after that's done, we'll bring the list of, priority projects and showing you the condition assessment and what roads are the most important. We have engineering fees. We're still working with the engineers, on that. It's not like, but there's enough of them that are deteriorated to a point you need to get those ones that are the worst, most traveled on before you start having to hit all the smaller ones. And so,
And just to give you an idea on road stuff, we looked at a project and we've been working on it. And you're looking at about 30, I think it was 38,000 feet of road. And it was a little over $13.5 million. That was with stormwater management and some other stuff. So just to give you an idea of the cost of doing roads.
but
It's pretty expensive, but that's grant funding we're going after right now.
But
So,
we'll get y'all a plan so that you, when the citizens call you, you have a plan. Like, just let us get through with the water sewer master plan, okay? And then we'll put together like potential funding sources with that plan and dates on possibly when things could be done. Because again, we are going to be in the future starting to look at a multi-year budget, so that will also help with the planning of capital projects. Are y'all ready for the Transportation Special Revenue Fund? So this was a fund, this money had been in the general fund, and we pulled it out because they are restricted funds. And that's why we made it a special revenue fund. The amount, the beginning balance of the fund after so last year, the amount that had been transferred was $626,000 to the general fund. This year, this was not something that was in the budget. It just kind of was done. This year, what we put in the budget to transfer is around a little over half that much, $355,000. So we're gonna have to grab that this year. And then the proposed for next year is another 355, and then the following year we're going to start continuing to work that down, because we got to leave some fund balance in there. So anyway, there's no projects in the transportation fund. The money's just transferred to general fund, and it's mainly used for police. So the ending fund balance at the end of next year will be 134,373. The goal is to stop having so much reliance on it, and eventually, if we can stop having reliance on it, then that is a potential funding sources for roads too. Any questions on that one? Okay, so the next one is the Water Enterprise Fund. The beginning fund balance is 585,370. We anticipate approximately 4.4 million in revenues. We spend around 410,000 in personnel, around 300,000 in operating. We have a substantial amount earmarked for capital, which is 3.4 million. That is on a number of projects, which we'll get to in a second. The debt service is around 90,000 currently. We're increasing the transfer to the general fund slightly. There were some additional revenues in here to help us do that from the CPI, as well as the revenues had been greatly underestimated versus what's actually coming in. So with the growth in a full year next year of the new homes that have come in, we feel very comfortable that the new estimates are more in line with what the actuals are, making the ending fund balance 414,659, slightly above last year. The changes, mostly capital, that are coming out are we had to pay additional 75,000 for CDBG grant. We put in there around 50,000 for a storage building to be paid over 2 years to protect the men's equipment and split amongst water and sewer. We have a lot of our assets currently are exposed to the weather, and we need to protect them so they last longer. As well as the well is a big one that came in that we put money in there for the debt. So what'll happen is a lot of money will come in to pay for these capital projects, and then we'll pay for them, and then we have the ongoing debt service in future years. That's why it looks like so much this year, but next year that'll drop. And then there was money put in for the water sewer master plan split between water and sewer, which y'all already approved this year and is ongoing, but we'll still have some remaining costs next year because they're not done with it, and the impact fee study. The strategic planning items that are accomplished through this is you had the water sewer master plan on there. Again, that was Florida Rural Water is doing it for us for a decreased cost. Again, the impact fees are something that Florida Rural Water is working on as part of the water sewer master plan. And the rate analysis, they've also taken that on for us very, very inexpensively. That works under that current contract you approved. Well number 3, which has already been bid, and we just signed the documents today. SCADA, AMI, which is the replacement of the water meters, and that's that program, which will actually, people will have more accurate readings, and it'll help with some of the water loss. So there were a number of them for water that we've been moving heavy on. Bruce has been doing a really good job. He does all right. And everyone back, I mean, look, all our staff is wonderful, and we couldn't, without them, nothing would be done. They're the ones always coming to us with the ideas. We're just running with their ideas. So, sewer, the beginning fund balance for sewer is $989,754. We anticipate $8.5 million in revenues. We have around $210,000 in personnel. We do contract with Twofold to assist us some as well. And that's not included in that personnel cost, it's included in operating. $560,000 for operating. Again, we had significant capital projects. $7 million. Debt service, $457,000. The transfer to the general fund, $310,000. The ending fund balance is around $1 million. It's just slightly a little higher than last year. So the main big changes with the sewer enterprise fund is the wastewater treatment plant expansion, where we put the money in there for that. And, as a revenue, hoping we get the grant. So obviously, if we don't get the grant, then we'll have another discussion about how we're going to do this. But that was the thought process, putting the revenue money in there and offset it on the expenditure side as well, which we're supposed to hear about any day. I think every week I ask Bruce, when are we going to hear from him? Are we going to hear from him yet? When are we here? We're supposed to hear it.
I talked to Tim today. He said, I should have heard in July. I said, well, Tim, it's August, in case you don't know what month it is. Sir? He's an engineer, so cut from the same cloth. We're just waiting on that. The project's still ranked #1. Nothing's changed. We're either waiting for them to give us a Dear John letter or say, yay, get moving. So
We need to start sending flowers every day, like, chocolates, like find out what they all like. Yeah.
we're just waiting on them.
Been set aside, or we've purchased enough of the things that we're set for repairs on grinders, and we're not gonna just shake your head. Okay, okay, because I know there for a while we were just sort of going, but we're good. Okay.
Yeah, we have spent some money.
Well, I know
But we got it.
we were getting caught up there for a while and so forth. I appreciate what you're doing, my
I'd like to
man.
remind you something. Remember, our system is 18 years old. We have pumps that are
18 years old.
once or twice a week, we got motors that completely burn out because they're already cold. I just ordered 15 pumps. Italian. Our homes have been built 5 and 6 times. The time when they just give up.
Say this, which I said back when my grinder pump went in, and I wanted to purchase the grinder pump, and I wanted to do it because I could have got it for half the price. And I'm saying this not to be facetious or to joke, but the city said, no, we're going to put it in because we want to make sure it's of the same level and the whole bit. Then I thought about it and said, you're exactly right, because then you're going to eat this baby for perpetuity, that it's yours. So the city has it. Knowing that, and I got it, I think being where you're at now and doing it, we have to know that on a yearly basis, we have to prepare and make sure we have enough replacements, because it is the city's responsibility to replace them, not the owners. That's what we took on when we started. So I appreciate your work, and I appreciate, but this is a yearly type of expenditure that has to go in. It cannot be, well, this year we're going to cut it a little bit. We can't do that. There has to be a funding there every year to make darn sure that there's enough there to replace, because you are correct. It's a annual thing, and so
We've done it so many times.
I agree, and I've heard some of what you've done in order to keep them going, and I applaud you. From our standpoint, where I'm getting with all this is, we have to make darn sure that the money is available, because somebody's sewer goes down, we can't sit there and say, sorry, we don't have the part for you.
So,
We can't do that.
so with that being said, we've heard all the stuff we done with grinder pumps this year. This coming year's focus is going to be lift station maintenance and going through that program and making sure it's where it needs to be.
Saying this is an annual, and it can't be put off.
Yeah, we're not giving up on the grinders, we're just moving on to the next.
I got you, but this isn't something that can be put off, we'll do it next year. This has to be vigilant.
With that being said, I'm gonna look into some of the older commissioners that's been on here for a while. We were supposed to be adding people to this department to keep up with rebuilding these things. We haven't done that either. So we looked at adding a person in the sewer. It doesn't support it right now. But the other side of things that we didn't take into account is, yes, we went to Gravity in a lot of areas. It's great. Gravity's got its own set of monsters and issues that have to be addressed as well. So we still, again, we're short-staffed in this department, and we're gonna have to make that a priority here shortly. So just to let you know, because, we've got one of the service workers now is a plant operator in training. He's doing other jobs as well, which will help start getting, but our sewer plant evolution is going to be growing at this point. Got, the second phase going in. We're looking at some reuse. There's a lot of things going on in this department, and yet staffing levels haven't really changed. So we've got to pay attention to that. Water as well. I didn't get a chance to talk about it. Water, we need at least one more in water at this point too. So Public Works, we should have added 4 people this year. Right now we're at 1.
And, we need revenues to add those people, and that's why we're looking at, we're doing the rate study. And we are, doing the impact fees. And if we can get some quality growth, that makes sense for High Springs, not just open the doors to anybody. But if we could get some quality growth, that would really help us. So.
And I'm not bashing the process. I'm just letting you know where we need to go.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you some insight. Yes, sir.
I know we had a problem a while back when people at that fault when it tear up. Is that a big issue as it used to be?
No, it's got better. I guess the word has got around.
Education and building.
Premature failure of pumps is not natural. There's a do's and don'ts of the stuff that can be put inside that system. Unfortunately, some people might not read the pamphlet, might not go on the internet, they might not look into it, but it's costing them money. But once you charge them once, then they actually are more careful. And they'll let their neighbor know.
I guess so.
And the people on the street. So now, that's slowed down quite a bit in the last couple of years.
Okay, yes,
We started doing this many years ago.
right.
Because it's not easy to get charged $400 on a water bill. Not just for sewer. Water bill is a separate deal. It's expensive. So people go outside, it's $800-900 bill. You can fry the entire pump.
Right.
That we can't rebuild it. Either Bo can rebuild it or I can't rebuild it, then we gotta buy another pump. So I gotta charge somebody for it. It's our equipment, like you said, it's our equipment. You tear it up.
You pay for it.
It's broken. And I take pictures, I knock on their door, and I say, come on, let me show you. So you can see it with your own eyes. And Mel and Richard do the same thing, they bring them out their house, please take a look at it.
And I'll set up
Don't feel rough out,
PowerPoint.
this is your stuff in here.
I'll set up a PowerPoint of some of the things we found in the garden pumps if you'd like, we can show it on the screen.
I know.
No,
Just
thanks.
throwing that out there.
So I make sure I get pictures and my guys talk to the people and they know that they're gonna get charged, they're not surprised. And if they're not home because they have a sewer alarm, there's a problem, we leave the door hanger, please call Public Works. And then we give the information to Laney and it passes it on to them that they're probably gonna get charged. So they will show them the pictures, but most of the time, they're there, when the alarm is going off.
That's a
So that
good
leads to my
thing.
question. So are we having problems getting that money when people owe us?
No, we seem to be doing pretty good on recovery.
I'm the one where I was,
We have the one or twos, you know, it's gonna happen.
That's on
Majority
everything.
of them cover it, and they've done a really good job of education over enforcement with this, and they've really done well with communicating with the public and, you know, the do's and the don'ts. That's where we're going.
Do we have a recurring type of education thing to remind people, or do we put it out there one time and then it goes away? I know it's it used to be something out there on the webpage, but is there something which, like an annual reminder or something that goes out and says, hey, look at, I was the worst one. I was doing grease down when we first started because I didn't read the deal. I use paper towel now, man, and I wipe the grease off every time before I do it, and then I wash the thing. There ain't an ounce of grease that goes down the sink. I learned the hard way. But my question is it a repetitive type of thing to where people will get, like an annual type of thing? Remember, don't put this in or so forth. Do we have something?
We have an evergreen graphic that shows the do's and don'ts that we try to put out on a quarterly basis.
Okay. Thank you.
So we'll move on to fire now. Oh, wait, solid waste. I forgot solid waste. Yeah, okay, so, the beginning fund balance is 210,000. The revenues are around 1 million. Personnel, we spend 43,000 on, operating 729,000. The transfer to the general fund, 238. And the ending fund balance is 215, slightly above last year. There were no changes. We didn't really have any strategic planning items that came out of our session, but since our session, there's been lots of issues, as y'all are aware, with our solid waste provider. Staff has been working through those. From what I understand, they're not all resolved, but it's getting better. Okay, still a lot to resolve, but there are some successes in there. They're doing bulk weekly now. They've increased their communication. They're more responsive to us when we get a hold of them and do things quicker that we ask them to do. But there's still more work to be done. But it's headed in the right direction. And they will be at your commission meeting on Thursday too, so that y'all have your chance. They're going to talk about how they plan to do better, provide higher level of services in High Springs, and y'all will have your chance to question them and to have your say on what you've heard from citizens and what you would like them to do. Fire, the beginning fund balance is 48,333. Revenues are at around 1.5 million. Personnel is slightly over 1 million. Operating 174,000. Capital 175,000. Debt service 37,000. Transfer to the general fund 100,000. And the ending balance is again equal to the last year's 48,333. The big changes this fiscal year were the vehicle replacement. We already put money in there for the squad engine and brush truck replacement. So those were strategic planning items, and they are noted, as well as the fire is one of those that they're conducting the impact fee study on as well.
For Dewey,
You're going out for 2 of them?
We're going out for 2 big units, which we'll talk about Thursday night. And then because of the way that the ordering cycle is going, we won't have a payment on this until next budget year, but I got it in the budget order. And then this coming budget year, we're gonna replace the brush truck out of the fire assessment funding that we've already approved, so.
So it's just the one, that's the 175?
The 175 was the fire assessment money that we made the adjustment on. So we put it all in vehicles, and that includes the current fire truck payment.
Right, that's what I'm saying, okay.
Yes. And then what we'll do is we'll replace the brush truck. We'll go through that money, we'll get all that straight for the brush truck. We'll order the 2 new big trucks, which is coming to the commission Thursday night.
Right,
And then the brush truck will be paid for this year, so there'll be no financing with it. And then next October, we'll have the payment on the new truck.
okay,
And
because I
then
just,
the budget will be adjusted out and it'll go.
okay, I know Thursday we're gonna do it, but just
Yes,
the
sir.
175, it's not, both of them aren't showing in this budget because it's gonna be next October for the other.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll have finance options and ideas for
Okay.
Thursday night to discuss those vehicles. So we'll do an adjustment for this budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, then the fire, I get impact fee. So the impact fee, the beginning balance for water, 54,000, the revenues for water, 22,000, expenditures, 27,000, leaving us 49,341. And most of that is just money in contingency if anything should come up. However, our impact fees are probably the lowest in Alachua County. I'd be surprised if they're not. So Florida Rural Water is doing that assessment, and staff will be coming forward, probably recommending that they have a substantial increase because we're losing a lot of money. A lot. And if we can get what we should be getting on the impact fees, that'll help pay for the well pretty quickly. Then we can take the money that's been allocated for the well, maybe for another employee in future years or something. So the beginning balance for sewer is 507,000. The revenues for sewer, 300,000. The expenditures, 135,000. The ending balance, 672,494, slightly higher than the previous year. The major changes and the reason we're kind of holding on to that amount and not recommending an employee yet is because we need to see if we get the grant funding, and we need to see if we bid it, how much more it comes in at, if we're going to end up having to pay more than we anticipate because construction costs have increased. So that's why we're kind of holding on the recommendation for employees. We need to see what's going to happen with that wastewater treatment plant first. So again, the main things are the wastewater treatment plant and the contingency. We didn't have any strategic planning items on the impact fees. They're kind of covered from the water and sewer discussions.
Ashley?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there a state statute that says that we have to spend impact fees within X number of years of collecting them? And is that, or am I just?
I've never heard of that, but I can double check on it. That may be something that's a difference between, the state I came from and the state I'm working in now, but I've never heard of that typically, because the projects are so vastly different, and a lot of times they're very high priced items, and some cities, want to pay as you go, and other cities will issue debt. It's not typical to put a limit on the time you need to spend them. The statute normally is on how you spend them, and a process for spending them correctly. Some places make you do like a special board when you spend like another layer before it goes to commission. Some places don't, but it's normally the process and what is spent on, not a time limit.
Okay, I just asked if we could check on that, because and Byron may have another recollection, but I can remember a previous commission a number of years ago that ran into a situation where I'm almost positive that they were told they were coming up on the deadline for spending certain revenues because they had been not spent in 4 or 5 years. So I'm just.
Sometimes if they've already been allocated, then you have the timeline, but if they haven't been allocated yet, then you don't. But I'll check on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, no problem. just writing it down, sorry. Any other questions? Florida Rural Water is working on it. Do you know how far along they are on the impact fee part? Because I think what they're trying to do is finish the water and sewer master plan, because then they have the CIP projects from that, and then that's included in the calculation for the impact fees. So it would come after that, but I think they said they were going to work on it a little bit consecutively because as they figured out what the projects were. So do you know, Bruce? What the-
When's your last commission meeting? Be the one after that. So actually, I met with Catherine yesterday and talked to her again today. We're getting all the numbers together and everything now. So I'm hoping that we say hopefully mid-October, we should see it. Is kind of where we're at right now. It's just a matter of trying to get everything together. She met with JC yesterday on a couple things with sewer that we need to address, and we're just trying to compile all the information now.
Process.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because it's been so long since we did it, there's a lot of data we didn't use. We
Right.
really started over with it.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
And before we come to projects, we were wanting to do the asset management and really see what's in the ground and just really kind of be very comprehensive instead of that's making it take longer too. Can I move on to CRA now? CRA, the beginning fund balance is 429,612. Revenues are estimated at 207,000. Personnel 75,000. Operating 166,000. Capital 65,000. Transfer to the general fund 27,000, and the ending balance 302,000. The main changes in this budget were the lighting project, which y'all preliminarily told us to go forward on, but we haven't brought a contract to you for approval. So we issued the RFP on that. We're still negotiating the contract. An added cost to that is we're also checking into how much, if there's boring underground, any electrical that goes along with it. Before we sign the contract with the lighting company, then it's come to you for approval and sign a contract with them. We want to make sure how much that other cost is. And so we know the whole project cost before we move forward. But so we did put money for the lighting project in there though, because obviously it's not going to get finished this budget year or even started. Could started, but maybe definitely not finished. We are getting we've been talking to Kimley Horn, who is getting us a proposal to do a photometric study downtown, and we're going to bring that to y'all to see if you want to do it, but we went ahead and put it in the budget and just in case. And what that involves is having them come down and look at all the light poles, because there's a lot of really dark areas downtown that you can't see people when they cross the street for safety purposes. So they would determine what poles, we keep, what poles we don't keep, what lighting needs to go into them. It's really kind of more of a safety things and what their placement is. So we have downtown lit safely. So it's not the other lighting project is the ambiance kind of lighting. This is more like the pole safety and where we need to put future lights, like if we need to put more down Railroad Avenue and things like that. So if we get a good plan, then it might be something that we see which ones are the most critical ones to do first, and maybe just do a couple of streetlights every year or like whatever that involves. But I would hate to know there's an issue and someone get hurt and not have been trying to move forward on it. So that's why I put that money in there for at least the study to get started. And then GAI had, what's that called, David? Had the peanut mill? Okay, finding of necessity. They had proposed to do a finding of necessity to see if we should add the peanut mill into downtown. And so that's something we would bring to the CRA board to see if you're interested in adding that to the CRA district, should something to be added. So if in the future anything happens, like Rails to Trails goes down there, somehow the development gets off the ground or things near the development, that money, would go back in the district and we would recapture some of the property tax from the county if they were willing to consider it as well. So That's on there. If, it's not saying if you approve it, we have to do these projects. They would all come before the CRA board, but they're in the budget and just in case. The facade improvement grant, y'all approved the grant last meeting for Kelly Barber for his improvements. Those are not going to come out of this budget because we need for him to complete them and get us all the paperwork and everything for it. So we had to take those funds and shift them into next year. And then we added another 20,000, which is the amount that's 20 to 30,000 is what's kind of been typical that's been put in the budget year to year. So it looks like it's doubled, but it's kind of not because we're not spending the money this year. It's just rolling over. So out of the strategic planning items that y'all talked about, we this year y'all just approved the CRA strategic plan at your last meeting, and we have the lighting project that we're moving forward on if the boring and everything comes back affordable and y'all continue to decide to approve the contract. We got a grant to help with some of the downtown parking. I'll let Bruce talk about that. We had Kimley Horn work on a grant for us, and we were lucky enough to get it. And so that's going to help with some of the stormwater management and give us a parking plan for downtown. And as well as David's been working on collaborating with the county on some landscaping improvements. So those were all things that were in the strategic plan. Do you want to talk about the grant more, David? The grant that we got, the stormwater, Kimley Horn stormwater. I mean, Bruce, sorry, I was thinking of David.
So, I was confused, Dave.
Wait, okay, Bruce. We'll do like opposite day. Bruce and David.
I was confused there for a minute.
Unlike David.
It's like, okay, well, so I mean, just what the city manager said, they're going to be identifying some stormwater management issues downtown. They're going to be looking at some parking around the farmers market in that general area by the old Western Auto. Try to clean up some of the parking downtown, try to deal with some stormwater management. As everybody knows, we're at the whim of DOT when it comes to downtown parking. So if it's there tomorrow, who knows? Depending on which way DOT goes with it. So we were fortunate enough to get a DEO grant to fund this project, to at least have a plan in place if that day does come, and give us an idea of what the funding resources that are going to be needed to make this happen, because we do know downtown needs some additional parking. So this will help with that, and hopefully help with some pedestrian traffic and that as well. So that's about it for it.
So do you have any questions on the CRA?
And the lighting plan will go into that too. We've discussed that as well.
So I have 2 slides on the unfunded projects, just so y'all know kind of things that we know the needs, we're not ignoring the needs, we're thinking about the needs, we have them in front of us, and if y'all wanted to, like, say, staff, please, this is our number one, you really need to focus on this and bring this something back during the year, try to get it in this budget. Not sure how I would, but, try, and we'll do whatever you want us to, we'll do our best. Projects not funded, obviously there are personnel. Almost every department needs personnel, quite honestly. And it's like they're all in the kind of, they don't just maybe need it, like it's needed. The other issue with personnel is, we did do kind of a market survey this year, and it came out that we were significantly below the other cities, a little slightly over 10%, almost 12%. And so the proposed raise bridges some of that gap, but then, the other cities will likely give raises too. So we didn't bridge it as much as we probably like to. But we did try to give better raises this year.
And we got to start preparing for this $15 an hour minimum wage. We got to start making that move after this budget.
But we try to keep everyone happy and give them reasons to want to stay in High Springs and have a kind of good work environment. But we are going to lose some employees if they can make more money elsewhere. And so I just wanted y'all to be cognizant that that is going to be something that we continue to keep our eye on. We continue to try to figure out ways in the future, if we can do better. And as we do, we'll be bringing that to you because we want to be competitive with our workforce and take care of our employees. Vehicles, obviously, you heard from Chief Shepherd tonight. His vehicle situation is probably the worst in the city. So that's where we put our money towards, and we want to continue doing that year to year. So we start making the situation better and don't go backwards. And security was something, controlling the access at all buildings too. So, like the blue highlights are the ones that are kind of really important that staff thinks is important. The other ones are important, but we understand if we can't do it right now. So another unfunded project was agenda software. City manager and city clerk's office would like that, obviously, make our world easier. Finance, budget software would be nice, getting off Excel. But we can work without it. Human resources, the human resource software, of all those softwares, I'd say the human resource software is probably one of the most important that we would like one day to have if we ever got more revenues. As well as, so building, the things in yellow, I have the highlighter of things we can probably figure out. So that's just, they are going to need some personnel if growth comes. So if any of these developments get approved, then we're going to need the staffing to handle it, and keep up with getting the buildings inspected on time and permitting and the quicker you can do it, then the quicker the revenues come in the city and we can, get our road budget and stuff like that. Planning, that was one that was important, but the land development code rewrite right after the comp plan is done, which we hope to bring it like in the next month to the planning commission. So right after that, we have a year to do the land development code rewrite. Christy and I are willing to do it in-house. We put a small amount to have the planning commission kind of give us some advice and guide us. But the amount it would cost for someone else to do it correctly and right is more than we have right now in the budget. So if we pay someone less, then it's probably not going to be done to the level we need it to, and staff can just do better. So, and then right after that, when that's done, we want to do a subdivision reg rewrite, and that's really important to ensure that the infrastructure is adequate. And the goal would be to still have the development agreements, but not have to have them as intense, I guess, as they are right now, because we would have our code fixed. The CRA, downtown parking, yes, like we have the grant we were just approved, but one day we're going to need money to do it. So some of the improvements, so those are marked in red, that these are the things like, it's probably going to be a little down the road. We're going to have to think a little harder about it and be creative, because we're not going to have money to do this, like all this downtown parking right away. So those are kind of the red, the pink. PIO marketing budget, be nice one day to have grow Kevin's budget so he could do more. We have a lot of talent here and we want to take advantage of it. Parks, Damon obviously would love to do more programming, tournaments, and events. So that's kind of like a wish list thing too. IT, this is the data center is a wish list thing, but kind of not really. Eventually it's going to be off the wish list and we're going to have to do that. And that's more just like a dedicated room, with all the IT stuff and keeping it protected. Again, I included on the top of the other one, personnel, vehicles, and security, again, just to kind of drive that home. Police, again, the things in yellow are the things that we think we're going to be able to figure out. The body cameras, Chief Shepherd is looking for grants, GPS, that as well. If we had extra money, we do think an outdoor storage facility for the Polaris Ranger is important. Again, that's protecting our assets so they last longer. Fire, one of the more important items staff believes needs to be done is the bay door and roof repair. So as money comes forward, if say mid-year we get more revenues than we think we do. These are some projects that staff would kind of maybe bring to you for mid-year budget amendments, or next year try to put in the budget. Or maybe not if they're not what you want, but we're just trying to let you know what staff is thinking. So y'all can go home, mill around, think about it, consider it. And a lot of these things were in the strategic plan, just to let you know. The paging system is something we feel is really important. ALS equipment is something that we think we can figure out, maybe get some grants for. Staff feels like a facility plan is something really important to have someone do professionally to figure out, how we've discussed this a little bit, but we have needs as far as a new police building, a new public works building, City Hall needs a facelift, just to have a professional come help us give ideas, not spend a ton of money, but someone who does this more often, and because they could probably end up saving us money in the long run. Generator for City Hall is something that we think we can figure out, possibly through the COVID money. Cemetery expansion, fence repair and replacement, we discussed that tonight. That's something we could probably use a special revenue fund for. Water, the new water plant is something that, staff is, we've submitted a grant for. The water main replacement program, that's something that that is going to be a lot of money, and it's just going to have to be on the radar for future years, kind of just like below the budget for reconstruction and resurfacing of roads is really important, but such a high amount. We need to kind of put it on there for future years. What we hope to do is not have just this in slides, but kind of make a spreadsheet with ideas and how, what our thoughts are and when, and how this is all going to happen and come together. We're just kind of touching on it tonight, but we will bring something more in depth on these in the future as part of a CIP program. The sewer, the SCADA is something, in the future, but not as important today. Generator for lift stations is something that we're working on a grant for. The transfer pump lift stations in the future, not today, but it's important. We did, as we discussed the roads, the roadway condition survey y'all brought up tonight, it's marked in blue because it's one of the more important things staff wants to get done this next year. And again, I already talked about the budget for the roads. So I don't know if y'all want any input on those, if you want to look at them again, want staff to send them to you, for y'all to guide us. Some of this y'all have guided us through a strategic plan, but I can send it again because, already from the strategic plan, things have changed. We've accomplished some things. We put some things in the budget. So as the more we can think forward, the better it is. So that's why I like to always kind of pitch these out to y'all.
Okay.
And that's pretty much what we have for this evening. If y'all have any questions, I can go back on any more slides or anything you would like us to do.
Anybody?
There.
Yes.
Hi there.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I'm glad we're moving forward with the comp plan, and I've learned that it was more of a updating versus a rewriting. And the LDCs doing them in-house is great. And yes, it saves us money, but it also dilutes the tasks of 2 full-time staff people to take that on. So I want to make sure we're doing that, because as these developers come into town, if it takes a long time to get that done, they're going to still play by the existing rules. And there are some things we probably need to address in our LDCs pretty darn quickly. So as you look at things, that we make sure that we're moving forward as expediently as possible, I think it's really important, or our community could be hurt by the outdated rules. The IT, I believe in the workshop I was in, that the ARPA funds can specifically be used for cybersecurity and that IT upgrade. So that might be something we look at finding a way to fund when those ARPA funds are in and you've had a chance to look at that. And then the last thing I just wanted to point out is, you know, we're funding part of one staff person, I believe, from the Wild Spaces funds in parks. But most of the money is going to facilities. And we continue to be expanding and putting literally millions of dollars into our parks, but not expanding the human resources that are needed to properly program them and make sure that our growing community has a variety of things available. So I think you've done a really good job at creating some priorities for us to look at as a commission. And I just have a concern that, you know, we do get to the point, even if we have to use Wild Spaces funds for some of the human resources, that we look at doing that, because that is an appropriate use of the funds in the parks. But thank you for what you've presented.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Ambrose. Definitely we'll look at that, because I agree, we do need another employee in parks. As well as, we'll look at the IT and bring you, you know, that as well as other things with the use of the funds. And as far as the LDC, staff is in complete agreement that we need to do that quickly and not have it take as long as the comp plan. I feel the brunt of it because Christy and I have to work with it every day. And so we're definitely motivated, and we have kind of our idea of how we're going to try to fast track that, even if it means we get what we want that's a lot better right now. And then we maybe have to go, so we just get something that maybe it's not perfect, because once you do it, even if you try to do the perfect one, you immediately see other things that you need to fix right after. But get something better quickly, and then if we need to go in the nitty gritty on some of it after, we can. But just to kind of, there's some good code out there that we can use, and we know the tweaks that need to be made to our zoning already. So I think we can turn that around quicker than the comp plan. But it's a point well taken. If we had the money in there, I would have definitely, if we had enough money to get someone to come in and do it right, I would have preferred that.
No, I'm good.
All right, I see we have nobody in the audience. Kevin, do you have anybody on your end? We do not. Yes?
Quick question, do you want me to explore that stuff with cemetery and bring it back? And cost?
Yes, please.
Okay. Double check.
I appreciate that. Okay. Anything else, anybody?
I'm good.
All right, then I need a motion.
So move.
Okay, meeting adjourned.